What's going on, ROM hackers? It's Sasiata. I'm going to be showing you guys how you can rip any model or any tile from a Gen 5 game. Pokemon Black and White are known for the really awesome maps on the DS games, and I'm going to be showing you how you can get any piece of them into your own ROM hack. Let's get started. We're going to want to use two tools. We want CTR Map and Blender. So let's first open CTR Map. If you haven't used this before, I highly recommend that you look at my previous video on ripping tiles, where I go into all the details of how to get these things set up. If you've already done that, then let's go ahead and open up CTR Map. Now I'm going to open up my Black 2 project, so this is going to open up the Black 2 ROM and all the data inside of it. Now we want to rip some model from some area. So let's go ahead and look through this list of places, and let's pick one that we want to rip. So I've picked out Reversal Mountain, which is number 531. You can pick whatever one you want, it doesn't matter, this works for any zone. So let's go ahead and select 531 and take a look at what's inside of it. So you'll notice a couple things about this. There's lots of different tiles. There's the ground tile, which has this nice rocky texture, these side tiles, which have some diagonal texture on them, and then you also have these dark walls out in the back. So these all need different material settings, and they all have different ways of being ripped. We've already gone over how to do the floor tiles in the previous video, so I want to show you how to get these things in the dark here and how to recreate that spooky look on them. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go to File and then hit Serialize Scene, and I'm just going to save it as Reversal Mountain. And it'll save as a common interchange format. So I hit save, and then we're going to go over to Tools, and we're going to hit Creative Studio. And that will open up the CTR Map Creative Studio, and I'm going to import that thing that I just exported. So Reversal Mountain CMIF. And you'll notice that if I go to Models here, it opens up a couple things. There's this one that is empty. We'll always have one of those. There's the actual model of the area itself, and you can right click to translate it, and you can left click to rotate it, and you can also press WASD to move in and out. You'll notice there's these little models here that are just kind of sitting around. So if I go back here, they look great because of the camera angle, but if I move it around like this, you'll see that they're just kind of sitting there. And a lot of mapping has to do with optical illusions with the camera to make things look right. It also shows a couple of the NPCs and items, but for now, we just want the actual map itself. And so I'm going to go right click on it and hit Export. And I'm just going to call it Reversal Mountain. And I'm going to save it as a wavefront OBJ. And I'm just going to hit Export. All right, so now we're going to need Blender. So if you have not got Blender, check my last video for this. I'm just going to open up the most recent version of Blender. There are certain things that you need Blender 2.79 for, I believe, but Blender most recent version is probably fine for what we're doing. I've used it before and it's all good. So what we're going to do is first open up a new file, and if you don't know if you haven't used Blender before, you'll want to use middle click to rotate, and you can hit shift middle click to translate, and you can use a scroll wheel to go in and out. I'm going to start by deleting this guy, and then I'm going to go to File, Import, and select Wavefront OBJ, and I'm going to go to wherever I just exported that last, wherever I exported that map file. So I'm going to go click on Reversal Mountain OBJ. You don't want the materials, you just want the Reversal Mountain OBJ. It will get the materials for you. So hit import, and you'll get this weird gray thing that pops up. You want to scroll out. You'll notice it looks a whole lot like the map, but it doesn't have any textures. So to view the materials, you're going to hold Z and go down. That will show you the material preview, and you'll notice that it looks a little bit weird. And we'll see why that is in just a second. You'll notice this weird section here that is normally black is actually some weird striped texture. I will explain that in just a second why that is, but don't worry, this is only how it's going to look in Blender. Blender looks at OBJs without any vertex colors, which are some additional coloring settings. So what we want to do is we want to grab these guys. So you can hit A to select everything, and you can click in object mode on just one thing to select everything with that visibility group. So if I scroll down, move myself out of the way here. If you look in the top right corner, there's a list of visibility groups, and this is basically everything with the same material being used. So if I click on one of these things, it selects all of them, and then I can hit Control I to select everything but those materials, and then I can hit delete, and then I will be only left with these, and those are the things I want. Before we do that, I want to show you one thing you need to do before anything else. I want you to hit A, and then I want you to hit S for scaling it. CTR map always exports things too big, so you're going to click anywhere and go to resize, and this little drop down will show up. You will want to rescale everything by 1/16 of its original size, so 0.0625 in decimal. I hit Control A, Control Z, and then I'm going to tab, Control V, hit tab again until it's nice and small, click off of it, and then I can zoom in. You'll know things are correct if I click on one of these buttons up here, and I can check whether or not this says meters. You want everything to be on the order of meters. All right, so let me move myself down here so I'm out of the way. And now that everything is the right size, now we can zoom in, and let's only select these guys once more. So we want to be in object mode still, hit Control I, delete. And now what we want to do is grab just one of them. So we need to be in edit mode. So let's pick one that looks good. Let's just get this guy. So before we go into edit mode, I'm just going to select them all again. I'm going to hit tab, which should put me into edit mode. If for some reason it doesn't, you can just go up to the top left here and click edit mode. And you'll notice that it shows you all of the vertices and all of the faces and all of the edges. So what I want to do is just select these ones. I want to go into face mode at first. So I'm going to select all these faces here, and then I'm going to hit Control I, which will select everything else, and hit delete. And I'll just say delete all the faces, and then I'll be left with just what I have here. So here's that weird looking wall. You'll notice that it doesn't look dark like these ones, and we'll get to that when we insert this into PDSMS. But right now, what we're going to want to do is make sure this thing is shifted to a good spot. So let's take a look at the top down. So you can just hit the Z button up here, and then I'm going to shift middle button to move myself around. Now I want this to be somewhat near the origin, so I'm going to hit A, and then I can hit G to translate it around. So I'm going to put mine right here. We want to keep it in the first quadrant, so by that I just mean right here. It's just easier to place it as a tile in PDSMS that way. Alright, so you'll also notice that it's a little bit too high still, so let's go into the head-on view, and it is the correct height, I think. So what we want to do is click on this magnet button, which snaps it to the grid, and if I hit G and then Z, it will only translate it in the Z direction, and it will snap to the grid, which is really nice. So I'm going to do that, and now I want to move it forward just one piece, one increment here, so let's do that. So I'm going to go G, and notice if I zoom in, the grid gets more refined, so it will be a little bit more accurate where it snaps to. You'll notice that it is a little less granular, so I want it right here. Alright, so that looks good enough, and once you're happy with how it looks, you always want to do this at the end. You always must do this before inserting it into PDSMS. Go back into object mode. Select this guy that you have. Then hit Control I and delete. We already did this in the beginning, but if you are trying to get a very specific piece of your map and forget to do this, you will not delete the extra materials up here, and it will not be able to be inserted into the game. So make sure that you only have the materials that are actually being used in the model itself. Alright, so always check for that. So once it's done, we go into File, Export, and there's one more setting that we need to change. So first of all, I'm going to find the location of wherever I want to save this, and I'm going to go into the forward axis and hit Y. This just orients it in the correct direction so that it doesn't look tipped in one direction in the game. So I'm going to call this darkwall.obj, and I'm just going to hit export. Alright, so now that we have the actual model and its materials saved, we want to go into Pokemon DS Map Studio, which is what you use for any DS mapping. Again, if you haven't used this, I have a bunch of tutorials on how to get started, but I'm going to assume that you have some working knowledge of how this works. So I'm going to go to File, New Map, and for me, I mean, you can add this to a already existing map, but I'm just going to choose one for Heart Gold. I'm going to select No Tile Set because I'm just going to make a fresh one. And then I'm going to go into my tile list editor up here, and I am going to add tiles. So because we've already scaled this, we can just select to 1.0, and because we exported it in the correct orientation, we don't have to select flip YZ. So I'm just going to hit OK, and then I'm going to go find that object file that I just created. And then I always select by date modified, so it comes with the most recent one. And you'll notice this says dark wall, and it's 2 kilobytes, which seems about right. All right, so I'm going to open this up, and you'll notice there it is. So let's try and place this object. Boom. So there is that wall. And you'll notice it looks exactly like how it looked in Blender. And right now, it does not quite look the way we want to. We want this thing to be dark on the edges so that it blends into the surrounding area. So what we need to do is assign some vertex colors. Now, vertex colors will just select a part of the object at a vertex, and it will color it, and it will make a linear gradient between adjoining vertices. So the easiest way to show this is just by doing it. So I'm going to drag this guy all the way down to be nice and dark at 0, and I'm just going to click on one of these. You'll notice how it makes it black, and now it's like totally unseeable. So if I want to undo that, I could just select the white one again, and what this does is it will basically just color it depending on what color you pick. So I could do red, and it will tint everything red. This is a really easy way if you want to color things on the fly for your projects. So what you can always do is just say 255, 255, 255 if you ever want to reset it. You can also change the brush size. But for our purposes, we want this thing to be kind of dark around the edges. And it looks like only the middle part has some brightness to it. So trying to get a better look at these, let's try this out. Let's try just making it like 13 or so. So if we get rid of all of the corners, that looks pretty similar to what we have here. But I want to make the middle a little bit darker as well, so I make it maybe a little bit gray. Maybe that's a little bit too dark, so I can lighten it up a little bit. And that looks actually pretty decent. Let's make it just a tad bit lighter. There we go. So that looks pretty similar to what we have here. And you can play around with it however you want. One thing to note about vertex colors, though, is that they will always be that color, regardless of whether you are a day or night cycle. So we all know that Pokemon games have different lighting depending on time of day. And what this will effectively do is make things look like they're glowing during the nighttime if they have any vertex colors enabled. So that's why you want to use these for indoor places, such as here. You notice how the floor is glowing? It's sort of like there's a light shining down on it, and this will be the same no matter what time of day because the material is enabled with vertex colors, because you don't really see the sunlight in a cave. So it makes sense to do this for indoor areas or if you're trying to make something glow. Alright, the last thing we're going to have to do to make sure that these vertex colors actually are applied in-game is going to our tile list, go to the material editor, and you'll notice it has this IN65, Iowa 01. This is just the name of the material, and I want to go down to this list of checkboxes and hit use vertex colors. And so now that you have this with the proper material properties, you can just export this however you like. You can put it into your own project and insert it the same way you would any other map. If you need help on map insertion, I also have a tutorial on that on this channel. It's called the Ultimate Mapping Tutorial. and it has everything you could ever want to know about how to insert your first map using PDSMS. So this is how you rip tiles from a Gen 5 game, and you can put them into any other game. This works for any area, any type of building, any type of map model, as long as there is some way of ripping the model with CTR map, which you can do. This should work for anything. If you have questions about this, please ask in the comments, and as always, if you have recommendations for other tutorials, I will do my best to answer them. So I've been Sauciata, I hope this helped you, and have a great rest of your day.